Hey everybody, welcome back to Think About Your Why Live with Maggie Cook and myself. Looking forward to talking with Brett Kaufman, who I met through our mutual business coach. And you were on my podcast. I was on your podcast. Now you're on this podcast. But it's great, and you've got so much depth about you behind your why that it would. I thought it would be. You'd be great to kind of talk about this topic right now, especially in today. I think where, as we sit here, it's November 18th, 2020. I think people are trying to figure out their why, right? Maybe they've been laid off, maybe they've been furloughed, maybe they're not sure what their future brings, and they're just trying to get centered and figure out their why. So, really, to kick off, Brett, maybe you can talk about kind of what finding your why actually even means to you.
Yeah, it's a great question, and thanks for having me, John and Maggie. It's fun to be with you guys and talk about this subject, which I am really passionate about. I think that this why, what does it mean to have a why, to find your why? I think it's really the North Star for everything I do. I use it as really kind of my filter, as my guide. I once heard the kind of question: if you were alone on an island and you had two tools, could only pick two things, what would it be? And there's all kinds of ways to answer the question, but the exercise that I went through was a compass and a map. And the reason is that that's how you can know where's your north, and then what's your map, how do you get there. And to me, the why is my north. It is my guide. It helps me know exactly where I should be going and how I want to be operating and living.
It's wonderful. Wonderful. So, Brett, what is your story? Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, I think depending on how far back you want to go,
well, let's talk about like the key moments on leading you to revealing your why. Like,
yeah. So, I mean, I've kind of shared with John and others, my why and kind of what I believe, our entire lives are really building blocks towards where we are today. And ultimately, in my case, the work that I'm doing and really finding my why. There's kind of a short answer, which is that I went through a bunch of exercises, a bunch of work. John and I talked about meditation, landmark forum, summit series, coaching. These things kind of, for me, helped me discover what I was passionate about. What did I love? What was it that I wanted to make my work? How could I bring my life into my work? How could I essentially bring myself, the fullest expression of myself, outward? And I discovered how to do that through a process, a coaching process, through those tools, landmark, meditation, etc. But really, what was before that was really how I came to my why, which was my life, my childhood, my upbringing, my experience in corporate America. All of these things that kind of led me to realize what I didn't like, what problems I wanted to solve for. I think that your entire life experience really drives you towards ultimately finding why you are here. And so for me, my why really is about optimizing the human experience for myself and for other people, and really trying to be of service and really trying to find ways to help other people connect to their passions, to their purposes, to their whys. That is really, my why now. And it is, kind of, again, that guiding light for everything we do. And that, came to me because of wanting to try to find my own why, having the experience I had where I wasn't in my why, where I was on autopilot, where I was trying to please other people, where I was trying to, follow the programming I had from childhood, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I think as people are on kind of the search for their why, and you mentioned, we talked about meditation, we talked about landmark, it's work to get there, and it doesn't necessarily happen overnight, and it can change as you evolve and grow. And I think all three of us have talked at some point about the same level of consciousness that got you to where you are isn't going to get you to where you want to be, and as you grow and learn, you change. And so my question is, can your why change as you evolve?
Yeah, I think, for me, the answer is absolutely yes. And I think if it's not changing, then, you're not evolving. And yet, the kind of caveat there is, for me, it doesn't change kind of in the same way that maybe it did when I first discovered it. So me leaving corporate America, me going out of banking and into real estate, and out of real estate, for production housing, and into my own creation of my company, and the way we wanted to build real estate and how we wanted to do it differently. That kind of shift was pretty massive for me. The shift of going from real estate into coaching and investing isn't as massive, because the core why is still there. The real estate communities that we were building were always about how we could impact other people's lives. It was all about building an experience where people could come together, where they could collaborate, where they could connect, where they could feel more themselves, they could feel happier, more peaceful, more joyful, more purposeful, right? That is still a part of my why. It's just that I'm not doing it in real estate anymore. So for me, it's just a more subtle shift, and it's more of a evolution than a giant jump into something else. And that doesn't mean that that's how it has to be for everybody. I mean, it could be a series of giant jumps. But I think there's the saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so I think that the growth of not just who you are, the evolution of who you are, is also going to expand your why.
That's wonderful. Yes. So I just wanted to bring something up because I was on your website. And by the way, the first thing that I come across is your landing page. And I love your tagline under your signature, which says, "For the collective, I create spaces that optimize the human experience. For the individual, I help integrate past experiences and future purpose into daily life." And then I went to where it says about Brett, and I'm just going to read part of a paragraph because I'd like to get a little bit more insight from you on this. I'm just going to read a short part. It says, "Driven by the bigger questions in life, Brett is dedicated to personal transformational work that allows us to live with more mental and physical freedom. He is interested in how we can relate to our traumas, both big and small. The experiences in life need to be moved and integrated. Brett believes that an acceptance of life and its terms need to occur in order to experience flow in the manifestation of our own life's purpose." Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we started to talk about it a little bit. My belief is that everything is happening as it's meant to be and for our benefit. And so, when I look back at kind of early childhood trauma and abuse and addiction and the events for me that were truly traumatic, I have such gratitude today for all of those, because I was able to have this physical embodiment of what that experience was like, enough so that I know what I do want and what I don't want, right? And even in kind of minor, less kind of profound ways, working in the banking environment when I first graduated from college, and being truly in this kind of corporate environment where I wasn't happy, where I didn't like my work, where I didn't see people that were loving their lives and their work. That for me, that was a real profound kind of physical embodiment of an experience that really helped propel me into creating what I did want. And so I believe that this practice of really looking at our life experience, all of it, the good, the bad, the trauma, the success. I interview people on my podcast, and oftentimes, and I love it when they do, they say, and John included, that they had a loving household. Sometimes the experiences that we have can be super positive, and we can use those to create from. So it's not just trauma, it's the good and the bad. How do we use it? How is it there for us to learn? How is it there for us to grow and to then use it in a way that is serving us and other people? And so generally that's, what I'm referring to in that paragraph that you just read. And one of the things that John and I both, connected on is that there's a lot of different tools. There's a lot of different ways to do this. It's not just, physical, it's mental, it's both, it's mind, body, spirit. It's really a big effort to try to integrate all of these modalities that are necessary for us to feel good and to be peaceful and to be joyful and to be purposeful and to, live our lives in a optimized way.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about right now. I want to kind of dive into a little bit, Maggie, what you talked about, which is, for the collective, I create spaces that optimize. I just want to kind of dive into that, because in that, when you're finding your why, I think it really takes time to, I think, step one, actually be comfortable in that space, right? Physically, mentally, spiritually. It's uncomfortable. It's like, most people have never meditated. I know when I do, big trainings or keynotes, one of the things I do is a 1-minute meditation. And people tell me it felt like 10 minutes. It was the hardest minute of the entire day or their lives. I mean, it can be pretty dramatic for some people. So finding that space and just being patient with yourself to expand the time of that space on a weekly basis to actually get to the point where you can optimize yourself and find your why, I think is really important. So how would you advise, Maggie too, I'd like your opinion after Brett, that people just keep trying to find that space?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I should clarify, and I'll answer your question, that I believe, what I was referring to there really was more about physical space. But it is about kind of creating space both for yourself and in one of the areas that I'm passionate about, which is the environment. So on the physical space, just to kind of touch on that for a second, what we've always tried to do as a community or as a company, is create physical spaces that would allow people to feel good right off the bat, that gave them energy. And that might be the design, the architecture. It could be the scent, the sounds, the light. There's a lot of things that I think just being in a physical space, when you walk into where you live or you walk into where you work, or if you, in one of the businesses that I've started, we've kind of recreated, or we're recreating, it's not open yet, a physical environment for therapy where it's beautiful, where it's serene, where it's uplifting. I think physical spaces can really impact our lives. So that aside, to answer your question more specifically, because I think it's a really good question and it's really important, I believe that the practice of creating space for yourself and for others is really, it's mindfulness. I mean, you have to really be conscious to this. You have to be, grounded. You have to really be in a practice that allows you to embody your experience and pause and breathe and really be present and not just speak, but to think and let, kind of your essence come out. This is a complex thing. This is not an easy thing. If you're doing this work, if you have a mindfulness practice, then you know what I'm talking about. But it can be very difficult, like you talked about, the people that just say that 10 minutes is the hardest thing they've ever done. It can be hard to not just talk. It can be hard to just listen and wait for the thought to come in, for the right full, expression to come out. Even just the idea of, and I think COVID has been helpful for me for this and for a lot of people, the idea of creating space in your day to not be so busy, to not run from one thing to the next. We talked, John, I love Wayne Dyer. I have actually fallen back into listening to some of his books recently. And he was just talking about how, you can't get the God, you can't get the download, you can't get the learning if you don't have space for it. It doesn't come. There's no room for it.
Right.
And so I've found, just creating a lot of less is more. You can do a lot more actually by not being as busy, just by having that space to let things in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And my space that I create actually every morning, it's called Maggie's Thinking Time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because it's a space where it's every day at the same time, and I create space where I'm able to really think about my day, my goals, and think ahead as to how I save time, how can I stay in purpose. And some of the beautiful things that I really have in my thinking time is, what is my intention for today? And it's really tied and related to my why. And I also ask myself, what is my inner voice telling me? Another big one is, what am I grateful for? And then another one that I ask myself is, what is my truth? But in going back and really looking at this last sentence on Brett's page, I really was moved by where he says, Brett believes an acceptance of life and its terms need to occur in order to experience flow in the manifestation of our own life's purpose. I believe that's so powerful, because once and actually you talk about this, then right, the next sentence is, how do we learn to surrender and let go and just be with life for what life is and all that is? And I really find that surrendering and to everything that's either happened in the past or what's, what you're going through right now, it's really part of opening the pathway of receiving so many blessings and so many opportunities that you would be missing if you just let go. One of the things that I write in my journal is, what is the one thing that I need to release today? And we need to get in the habit of really, like you said, Brett, is being mindful. It's so important, because we can easily get disconnected and veered in a different direction by the events that are happening today in this world. And it really comes down to the bottom of fulfillment. What is fulfillment? It's being on purpose with your life, and there's a lot of people out there that are struggling with, staying committed, they don't know their purpose. And so they don't know what to do. And, Brett, I'd like to ask, what would, if people are in the wrong line of work, what would your take be? What would your advice be to the steps to take to change their current situation? What would be some things, some ideas that if you could share, that would be amazing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things that come up when I hear you kind of lay that out. One of them is, sometimes this is just a matter of mindset. Sometimes it's a matter of kind of reframing things. And you might be in the wrong line of work, or you might have the wrong attitude about it. I mean, there's some things that you could say, gosh, I can't believe I have to do this. And then with the same thing, you could say, gosh, I get to do this. I'm so lucky I get to do this. I mean, you could literally have either thought, the same person, just by switching how you think about it. And so I think you have to kind of start by asking, is it something outside of me, or is this something in me? Am I going to go over there and then have the same mindset about that thing? And so that's kind of the first thing, is a learning to, reframe things. I have had the experience in my life to know, and part of, that paragraph that you read, is that the things that have been the hardest for me, the things that have been the most challenging for me, and this is so cliche, but it's just my life experience. It's cliche for a reason. Those things end up having the biggest impact on me, creating the biggest openings, the biggest shifts. And once you start to see that, then you can really start to surrender because you know it's just happened over and over again.
Yeah.
But back to your question on people that are struggling, yes, sometimes it's mindset, sometimes it's reframing, sometimes you're actually not in something that's really aligned with who you are. And the one exercise that I love to start people with is something I call love twos. And it's just writing out the longest list of things that you love, not just in your work, but in your life too. More importantly, in your life than your work. And when you're done writing that list, expand it and expand it and expand it until you absolutely just can't think of one more thing that you love. And then you can go back at that list and say, what's in here that I could actually maybe make my work? If I could do anything every day, what's on this list that I could actually figure out how to make my work? And it's amazing what comes from something like that.
Yeah, and I love what you're talking about. I love what you're talking about there. But I want to dive in for a second about mindset and reframing, because just if we look at science, the average person has 12 to 60,000 thoughts per day, of which 80% are negative and 95% are repetitive thoughts. And so that's fact, and we can't run away from fact and data, right? And so with that being said, I bring it up because I think it shows how hard it can be for people, right? The person with 60,000 thoughts a day, 80% are negative, whatever their lineage is, to the extent of how negative it is, it's hard to kind of like get out of that. And so, how does somebody take a first step whose negative thoughts are just really tough? And then how does that person find their why and keep it alive, right? How do they find their why and keep it alive when maybe they're stuck for 5 or 10 years somewhere, right? Where their why they know can't really be evolved for, in the future. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, it is really hard. I want to just kind of, acknowledge that this is not easy stuff.
Right.
And depending on kind of how stuck you are and where you are and how early in this process you are and what other kind of programming you have and parental expectations or you have families or peer pressure or whatever it might be. This is tough stuff. This is really not easy for a lot of people. It was not easy for me. I was 35 years old when I started my own business. Not that that's, old, but, I spent 35 years living a certain way. And I'm still, 10 years later, unpacking my own stuckness, my own programming. I think this is a life's work. So it's a very hard thing to do. I think that if you're asking the question, if you're feeling like you're stuck, that means you're conscious to it. You're starting to get some awareness, which is a really, really great sign. That's the first step. The thing that, I love about, what you guys are doing and John, the work that you do and the opportunities I've had to support other people is I think getting help is the number one thing that you can do.
Yeah.
Once you have a little bit of awareness, you've got to start asking for help and just start with somebody, anything. It can be a book on tape, or I guess that's how I used to do it. Now it's podcasts, it's audio books. I mean, there's a ton of free content. This does not mean you need to have, executive expensive coaching. If you can afford coaching, I'm just a huge proponent, whether it be therapy or coaching or talking to friends. You can simply just share what's going on with a friend, with a coworker. Be vulnerable, share. I think that you'll find that you are not alone. And that to me is just a giant unlock for people that are stuck, to realize I am not alone. Other people are like me. They feel the way I feel. And some of them have moved past it, or some were further along in the journey and they have ideas and recommendations and ways that can help you move forward.
Yeah.
Sharing, vulnerably, I think is probably the number one thing that you can do to start.
Mhm.
Well said.
One really awesome exercise that I did a few years ago, and I just did it because I felt like it would be interesting, and I just wanted to make sure that I was right on track with my purpose. Was I set out to ask friends that I love and trust and family. I just reached out to them and I said, "Hey, what do you think is my superpower? What do you think? What have you seen throughout the years that you think I'm great at?" And boy, some of the things that I didn't even realize that that I am, that they help me open my eyes, because sometimes it takes, like you're saying, Brett, somebody to look at your situation, your life from an outside lens to be able to help you, to be able to direct you and point you in the right direction when we feel stuck. And it's a really real place to be if you're not in the place of happiness that you want to be in life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no question. No question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really smart, and that takes a lot of courage to actually do something like that. So kudos to you for asking that. All right, Brett. Before we go into a speed round, tell everybody what you actually do for a living.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I do a lot of different things, but I'm predominantly a real estate developer. So we build communities that are mixed use in nature. We're focused on building conscious communities, so they really embody a lot of programming and events and opportunities for people to connect and collaborate and to live into their best selves. We'll house meditation centers and fitness classes and opportunities for artists and creatives and all kinds of people to explore technology and entrepreneurs and you name it, ways for people to really just come together, connect on what we say is well-being, expression, and impact. Lots of philanthropic opportunities, lots of ways to get involved and get engaged in the broader community. That's what we do. Our kind of big project is the gravityproject.com. Gravity Project, which is gravityproject.com is where you can find it. There's two phases. It's a very large scale mixed use project here in Columbus, Ohio. That's predominantly what I do, with kind of most of my day, but I've been fortunate to really build a self-managed company. I have a great team, and that's allowed me to kind of get into a lot of different areas, starting new companies, investing in entrepreneurs. I'm really passionate about being able to support entrepreneurs, not just with investment, but with coaching and consulting and advising and board work. And yeah, we're starting new companies and, kind of jumping into a lot of new territory.
It's great. It's great. One of the things I'm launching today is something called Think Big After School. It's coaching for anybody who's in school, 2 days a week from 4:30 till 5. It's free and just there to kind of help people who are in middle school, middle, high school, grad school, college, etc. I think they just need a lot of help. And so my question to you is, what advice would you give somebody in middle school right now, right? That will help kind of shape their high school and college years that would have a really big impact.
Sure. It's funny. I interviewed a woman on my podcast today who told me her first entrepreneurial gig, her first startup, was selling her dad's beer to the construction workers that were walking down the street by her house. I think she was like 6 or 7 years old, and
Right.
you realize that these guys looked like her dad, and they probably wanted to drink what he drank. So she took the beer out of the fridge and sold it to him for $5 a piece.
That's awesome.
So it's never too young to start, in the business world. I think that the advice that I would give a middle schooler is the same advice that I would give somebody much later in life. And it's really that what I believe your greatest strengths are is really using your life experience to create. And so, when you're in middle school, you might not have a lot of experience, but you have the experience that you have. And don't diminish that you have a view of the world. You are seeing the world through a lens that is privy to a enormous market. There are a lot of 13 and 14-year olds, 12, 13, 14-year olds out
Right.
there in the world that big corporations are trying to cater to, that new ideas and innovations are ripe for. I have a friend who has a great business that he started with his daughter, which is essentially like a texting tool that allows children and their families to communicate without having to be so attached to social media. And I'm probably butchering the business, but it was his experience with his daughter that had him get the idea, and his daughter's experience with social media that had her say, I don't like this. I wish we had that. And so, I guess, to be specific, that a middle schooler is having an experience right now that has real value, and don't let anybody take that away. Trust yourself, trust what it is that you're experiencing, and find somebody that can help you create from that place, because you've got a lot to offer, and that will continue to be true as you get older at every stage. You have an experience that there's a market for.
Yeah, I love it.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Maggie, you got a question for Brett?
Well, I think all this has been so amazing. I just wanted to ask you one last question is, what do you have a daily practice? What do you do? Do you have a morning routine? What do you do to stay on purpose?
Yeah, I do. I have a daily practice. I'm pretty rigid about kind of how I spend my day, and it's kind of continually getting refined. But I have a morning practice. I'm really focused on sleep, so I really want to make sure that I get 8 hours of sleep is really kind of my target. And so I don't do anything too early. I like to wake up, somewhere around 8:30 ish, and get into my morning routine, which includes meditation, which includes journaling, which includes some breath work. There's some daily readers that I read out of. I pray, and then I'll go start my day. That sometimes includes a morning workout and cold shower. Sometimes I'll kind of just shower up and get right into the day and do my workout later in the afternoon. Depends on kind of what kind of workout I'm doing. I have kind of days that are sectioned off where I've kind of been working in this coaching system called Strategic Coach, that taught me a time management system where there's certain things I do certain days. So there's free days, focus days, and buffer days. And my buffer days are full of meetings and full of kind of email and work and really getting things done. My focus days are kind of big picture days where I'm, really thinking about the future and doing more writing and planning and, more kind of strategy. In my free days, I don't work at all. I don't think about work. I try not to, at least. I don't read anything about work. Um, I don't work, and those are kind of my recharge days. So that's really kind of how I've set up my weeks. I usually try to wrap up by 4 o'clock, and take a sauna and meditate and get some exercise and take a little downtime. Listen to a podcast or take in some kind of content, catch up with family, and then it's family dinner and time to relax and enjoy my wife and kids, and maybe a good book or something on TV.
Mhm.
Love it. Love
Love
it.
it.
Brett,
Balance and balance and consistency is very key for
Yeah.
success.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough. I always enjoy talking with you, learning from you. Everything that you have to share has so much insight and so much depth. And in many ways, it's so simple, it's complicated and then the hard part is actually daily living execution consistently of it, which I think is the hard part. But it all starts with, somebody like you sharing your experiences that spark something in somebody else to kind of do something consistently, one more day, one more hour, one more minute. So I appreciate you taking time to be on the show today. So thank you. Thank you to everyone who's listening. And Maggie, I'll let you close it up.
I just wanted to say thank you, Brett. You're amazing, and I am looking forward to learning more from you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep inspiring and creating change, and keep living your purpose, because that's what life is all about. So thank you so much. Thank you to all the listeners. And John?
Always fun, Maggie. Always great that. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you both. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot for having me.